Welcome, everybody. You're officially listening to Planet Green Trees, episode 214. We are calling it Return of Sheriff W.L. Federspiel. I want to thank everyone for joining us. The show tonight is number 214. Call numbers 1-347-326-9626. Today's August 28th, 2014. I'm your host, Michael Komorn of Komorn Law. And we are about to embark upon, you are listening to the Michigan's premier medical cannabis and cannabis reform radio show. It's our intent to provide you the most useful, informative, and instructive and illuminating perspective on the politics and cultural issues that are affecting cannabis patients, cannabis reform, medical marijuana in Michigan and nationally, and much, much more. To help bring all this in entertainment form, in the studio with me, assisting, are the following individuals. We're going to start in the other reverse order. We're going to start with the producer of the show. I call him a pro producer today because we were trying to get people to come on the show, as producers are sometimes tasked with, and he came up with a phenomenal guest, right on point, right on topic. One of the commentators of this very important study, I'd say. As
usual, he's pretty good.
That's it. And who, you? Was that you commenting on you, the producer?
No, somebody else.
Okay. That was you. And he'll tell you himself he's a great producer. Jamie Lowell. Thanks, Jamie.
Hello.
Little skew I can tell from starting this story. And, of course, the one and only Rick Thompson, who is the official news director and editor-in-chief of the Compassion Chronicles. Welcome, Rick Thompson.
I'm just a hanger-on, that's all. Ne'er-do-well, lurking in the shadows.
The next, who's now a regular and has provided many, many treats beyond his legal expertise in many of the topics that all of the topics we've been talking about. And they're hidden throughout our show. Maybe I'm going to play a couple from last week tonight and get some new live performances. But Jeff Frazier,
Aloha.
attorney and musical extraordinaire. And, of course, Chad from the Birmingham Compassion Club. Chad.
Good evening. It's nice to be here.
Say it, Chad.
We have launched.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was so close.
So, as indicated, there's two different types of announcements we can talk about on the show. But tonight we've got returning Sheriff W.L. Federspiel of the Saginaw County, recently in the national news concerning his department receiving and then returning a military tank. Similar gifting of military equipment is taking place across the country, but maybe not gifting, maybe actual purchasing. And see Ferguson, for example. But no other sheriff, as we understand, are returning the equipment. And what I understand also is that the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, we can go through the list of the various departments and what military purchases have been taking place, or which sheriff's departments are in receipt of what military equipment, such as Oakland County receiving a grenade launcher. But the news on Sheriff Federspiel is that he returned it after there was some national, I don't know what the exact reasons, but we're going to find out about it. Also, recent news story on a study that concluded that of the 13 states that had passed laws allowing for the use of medical marijuana between 1999 and 2010, there was statistics revealing that 25% fewer people died from opiate overdoses annually. And we are going to have on Marion J. Hayes, the Ph.D. and the commentary author of Dr. Betschhuber's study on the lower opiate deaths in medical marijuana states. We are also going to continue our ongoing calling out of the tragedies of what's taking place, not just in Ferguson, which needs its own special show, of course, but some of the other things that I think are reflective as a microcosm of what's happening in Ferguson elsewhere in our great state, involving task forces and overreach and conflicts of interest and economic incentive and the list goes on and on and on. And we're going to talk about that tonight because it's still a topic that needs to remain in the forefront of the news and something that we're going to continue to talk about and continue to harp about. Also, we're excited to have on the show a friend. I'd like to call him a friend, and I think he's an admitted Planet Green Trees listener. Brad Forrester, recent renewal to the Michigan Normal, and of course he's also the organizer of the Mackinac Bridge Walk, which is a event that is going to take place. Help me here, Monday.
Monday at 6 a.m. it starts.
And gathering people from our community, cannabis reform, medical cannabis, to embark on that with a 5, 6, 7 mile walk across the Mackinac Bridge in solidarity with other communities and other persons that join. But it's always a significant and wonderful day for everyone that participates. And I want to thank Brad. We're going to talk about that. He gets on the show and what the walk means, and also some of the direction of Michigan Normal and where Michigan Normal has been going. I also want to give a couple shout-outs, if I can. First of all, to my good friends Pam and Dewey. Dewey's good to see this week, and we got a big journey tomorrow. Make sure you're in place and all geared up, ready to go. Pam, of course, that really is a call-out to you to make sure that Dewey is. But thank you again for all that you guys do to help out the cause. I want to give a shout-out to the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association, MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org, all the moderators and administrators who assist in the safe environment to talk about and involve the conversation of medical cannabis. Komorn Law, 1-800-656-3557. The Marijuana Ranch, 313-422-5281. Call and set your appointment for a tour of the Cannabis Cultural Center. Also, a shout out to our good friend Dr. Kumar Singh of Greenlight Clinic, 248-390-0574. And although they're in our thoughts all the time, he's in our thoughts. But not mention of Bob Redden. Want to give a shout out, Bob. We haven't heard from you. You should call in. As many of you know, Bob was the first victim of the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. One could say House of Cards. And from that event, there are quotes that Tori Clark, his beloved, when questioning her medical condition, she just had cervical cancer. Well, 5, 6 years later, she's no longer in hospice and has left us. But it's just an example of some of the arbitrary and really capricious and violative way that we've seen and witnessed some of these task forces go after people and really tear people apart. And the list goes on and on. Brian Vaughn comes to mind as an individual who, we met him and he was forever in the system and died still connected within the system. Really just in a showing of human experiments in the court system. And on a lighter note, shout out to our good friend Eric Gunnolds, the trustee for Federspiel Township. I always like to point Eric out as an individual who was obviously someone very engaged in the community, but then took the next step to get involved and get elected to his township as a township supervisor, as we advise people and encourage people to get involved at whatever political level you can.
You can text in at 810.
That's good co-host stuff. Now that is good co-hosting right there. Rick, it's still up in the air.
I heard that, yes.
He knows he's not allowed to put a little pressure on him.
Amazing how people perform when they think their job's on the line. What? Oh, my goodness. We're just joshing, folks. A lot of in-jokes here, but you'll just laugh with us later. You'll get the joke later. Promise.
We're going to stay on time because my producer's not standing up. He was introduced first.
That's as good a reason as any, I guess.
Lording over him.
I didn't even begin.
All kinds of whip cracking going on around
he
here
hasn't
lately.
shaved, so he looks scary. He's all intimidating.
So those are our three guests. I think we covered all that, right? We're moving along here. All right, so I want to rant for a couple minutes. We'll take a quick break and then come back. I think 8:30 is the sheriff. Is that right, Jimmy?
That's right.
All right. Okay. One of the stories today. There's two things I want to talk about. One of them is based on basically the concept here of the. We'll talk more with our guest, who is the commentator of the commentary author of the study involving where in those states during this period of time where medical marijuana was lawful, there was a 25% fewer fatal prescription drug overdose. I want to talk about that for a second, then I want to talk about the ongoing...
You know what, just real quick, Michael, it's all opiates, including street drugs like heroin and the prescription opiates.
Understood. Yeah, the point is, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, she's going to, even though I think this is not a conclusive study. It's more of a fact pointed out, and I think they actually don't really draw a medical or scientific conclusion. I think but the point I want to make is, like, this is one of the scenarios, the report of states with medical pot, so says the headline, sees nearly 25% fewer fatal prescription drug overdoses. When I see that, and does anyone not think, yeah, of course, we've known that forever. When and it's an interesting that it comes to fruition. I almost feel like that happens so frequently within our community. Like it, you hear it. It's street rumor, or what someone's personal anecdotal experience has been with interacting with medical cannabis. People that come out of the woodwork and tell their stories. And they're amazing, and they're willing to share them, even though during the periods where it may have taken place, it may not have been technically legal, even though for medical purposes. But we're knowing it, and we're hearing it, and it's been a known factor for a long time. So when I hear a study like this, and these are the conversations I have with patients, it's funny still sometimes when I'm talking to a client and they're seemingly going to great lengths to convince me that they don't like the opiates. They make them feel, all kinds of side effects. The cannabis is the only thing they really get relief from. I've had patients describe in going into Section 8 hearings that moment where you're in so much chronic pain, and some people have had this, whether it's official chronic or bouts of severe pain. That's what the alternative would be if it wasn't chronic. But where you're trying to rest, you've had your day, you're trying to shut it down, you need to sleep, you're tired, and as you try to drift off and your brain is about to shut down, you can't because there's pain, and it doesn't let you sleep, and you're up, and then that translates into the next day where you don't have any sleep, and you're looking for relief, and it's opiates, and it's a downward spiral for many. And I hear this, see it, and yet still always skeptical, always skeptical. Now, unequivocally, we've learned that the opiate the treatment of most chronic pain is done by opiate treatment, by pain management. And simultaneously, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but it is declared that the number one problem of import of illegal drugs across the border. I think that was the focus of the DEA in the Eastern District, and it's provided in this state. I know. I mean, story after story after story of heroin overdoses, prescription drug overdoses in high schools. It always begins with the high school kid getting into their parents' prescription drugs, which are synthetic heroin, running out to get them getting caught and going out and looking for it. I mean, it's a problem of prohibition in general, but it leads to overdoses. And this is not surprising. This is something that, even though it's not official, they'll tighten this thing up, and there will be an unequivocal scientific finding of this. And the other point of it is that if it was anything but this, there would be story after story after story after story. What I mean is, if the rate of prescription drug or overdoses for something else like marijuana, which is not even a thing, I can't even make an example, I can't make a contrary example, but if it was something like that, we would hear about it. In other words, what is the worst thing that's happening that they can draw from other characteristics of people that use medical cannabis in medical cannabis states is that there's fewer fatal prescription drugs,
reducing
overdoses.
Other ills,
right?
Auto accidents. And
the point is, I think that is often
alcohol abuse
overlooked. While in Michigan, especially the chronic pain, overuse, chronic pain. Too many people have chronic pain, and they got a backache, they got a this ache, they got a that ache. So I hear, so the criticism comes, and any patient can go and get their card. Well, the fact is that the Michigan Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Agency, formerly the Michigan Department of Community Health, has a statistic. They have an entire website designated to, pages of the website designated to pain management. September every year is Pain Management Month.
Michigan.gov/PM is the Pain and Symptom Management Subcommittee.
They've got an entire agency that's designed to make sure that the treating of people who have pain is done in a regulated way, and that their questions and answers and is all provided. But the point that I want to make is that as they report, 25% of Michigan households in 2012 and 13 sought treatment for chronic pain. That's approximately 2.5 million people. And the Michigan Medical Marijuana Registry Program was reported in 2013, 145,000 total patients, 80% of whom are chronic pain patients. That's barely 100,000-ish of patients compared to 2.5 million. Now think about that in light of what we know now about overdoses. And what's also interesting is there's some of the queries that the physician comes up with of the awareness of the addiction and overdose risks with the use of opioid painkillers is something that needs to be looked at with the treatment of chronic pain. And and I'll tell you that it is not a leap. And many of the physicians who do have the engagement with the patients, look for the medical efficacy, can come in and usually make a case as it relates to the chronic pain patients, just merely because of the toxicity of these other opiates and the possibility of overdose or possibility of death or other side effects, whereas none of that exists for marijuana. You know why we know this? Because if it did, we would hear about it. I mean, we were talking today, and as I segue to this other quick story, I have 3 or 4 to 5 minutes. The discussion of physicians saying that smoking anything, how can that be considered medical? You know, you've heard this before, right? Jeff, we heard this today. You know, our doctor, suggests, or even our certified physician recommends that smoking anything is dangerous. And I'm not suggesting that it's not. I'm not suggesting that I am a scientist who could say otherwise. But if there was actually documentation that existed, that there was some connection of, lung risk or lung disease associated with smoking of marijuana, we would know about it. In fact, Donald Taskin spent his entire career trying to prove that fact, that marijuana caused lung cancer. And his conclusions after is that he gave up. It's not something that he could prove or establish. In fact, evidence suggested that those people that were using cannabis were healthier. There was actually as good of lung function with the use of cannabis. I'm not saying I'm a doctor. I'm not recommending people smoke anything. But before we start going off on a fear-mongering concern, let's be certain. And one of the problems, of course, is that it is a Schedule I drug, which could lead me to an entire other rant. I think we're going to save this for another day. But I do want to talk about the task force for a second, because it never ceases to amaze me that the stories keep coming in, and they continue to be, as bad as the next one. If I told you I watched a video in a case that we're going to be fighting up in cold water, where the escalation of the poor, victimized patient whose arm was disabled to start with, and the way in which the officer grabbed, twisted, and screamed into her face, stop resisting, as you can't help but to not cringe. It continues until week after week of still the drug task forces doing the most obscene acts beyond human acceptability. I'm talking about defecating in toilets for the sake of doing it, laying down their stink. I'm talking about, again, the stealing of sex toys and dildos and spraying gels and lotions all over, furniture in the bedroom, taking pictures with evidence next to those things, trying to embarrass and humiliate. Women's underwear drawers gone through and hung on the ceiling fans in the mirrors. It goes on and on and on. Stealing cash, children's birthday cards.
Piggy banks, too.
And piggy banks. This is just this last story. The worst is this, and we're going to hear about this, and it's going to be something we're going to have to blow up, but the raid at this location, licensed in a city by the local government, approved, functioning. As it was being raided, the officers took over the back room and sold cannabis to patients as they came in, unaccounted for. Not just to create crimes, but to make money.
Jeff almost fell on the floor when you said that. He almost fell on the floor.
That is unbelievable.
And then when the patients left, they arrested the patients who, of course, thought they were getting jumped, who fought back, and they arrested them more. It's like to malicious destruction of property for bleeding on their uniform, right? But and then it goes on after. And then of course anyone in and around the area that's a caregiver, they're going to their house. This is still taking place, and I like to believe that there are many directions in which communities have evolved. I think even the local police, in many circumstances, and the sheriff's departments. And I know we're going to have who I'd like to call a friend of the community now, Sheriff Federspiel, on, who is, I don't know if we had any impact on it, but he definitely has a different view of states' rights and the state's rights to enact a law and that it needs to be enforced. But beyond that level, we've got these multi-jurisdictional task forces funded by the federal government, following federal law, incentivized by their forfeiture gulpings and eatings and proceeds, that if it has any type of likelihood that it may possibly in one way or another have a link to some kind of illegal activity, they're taking it. It's value. And there's a problem here. It's very difficult to have medical cannabis or cannabis reform when there's no reform for forfeiture. You cannot incentivize the budget and funding of an operation on their takings, and their capturings, and their kill.
Right. That's it.
So that's it. That's all I can say.
I mean, what more can you say than that?
That's about it. That's about the definition of what you could call a rant. All right, so that's it. We're going to take a quick break here. The call number is 1-347-326-9626. We're going to try to open up. When we get back with the sheriff, we're going to come back with Rick with the news, and then get into the sheriff, and we're going to take some calls if we can at the last half of this segment. So that number is 1-347-326-9626. If you want to call in, you're listening to Planet Creatures. We will be right back.